My neighbor built a $50,000 fence to steal my ranch. So, I turned her gate into a toll road that charges her $500 every month just to leave her own house. Karen Morrison blocked the dirt road my great-grandfather built in 1947, thinking she could force me to sell 200 acres to her developer friends for pennies on the dollar. Big mistake. What Karen didn't realize was that easement she was blocking wasn't just a right-of-way. I own every inch of dirt under that road. And Texas law has a beautiful little provision about private toll roads. Monday morning, 6 a.m., diesel fumes mixing with the morning mist, and the smell of revenge stronger than my coffee. There's Karen in silk pajamas, grinning like a cat with cream, explaining how her new security gate was for everyone's safety. The look on her face when I installed my own toll booth? Priceless. What would you do if your HOA tried to steal your family's land? Drop your location and your wildest neighbor war story below. Mine ends with handcuffs and a very profitable business. My name is Jake Sullivan, and I'm the third generation to work this 200-acre cattle ranch outside Austin. My grandfather homesteaded this land back in 1947, when it was nothing but mesquite and rattlesnakes, building that dirt road with a team of mules and pure Texas stubbornness. I inherited the ranch 15 years ago, and let me tell you, ranching doesn't exactly pay the bills anymore. So I work as an electrical contractor during the week to keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. My daughter Emma is 16 now, showing prize-winning cattle through 4-H. That girl has more grit than most grown men I know. We've been a team ever since her mom died in a car accident 3 years ago. Cancer would have been easier to fight than black ice on Highway 35. The ranch sits at the end of a dirt road that cuts across what used to be the Johnson family's cotton field. About 5 years ago, some hotshot developer bought that land and turned it into Sunset Hills Estates, one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house looks like it came from the same catalog. McMansions with 3-car garages and lawns so perfect they look like AstroTurf. That's where Karen Morrison comes in. 52 years old, pharmaceutical sales executive, moved down from Dallas 2 years ago in her white BMW with vanity plates that read Quenmo 1. Real subtle, right? She's married to Brad, this mouse of a lawyer who apparently learned conflict resolution by studying ostriches. She got herself elected HOA president by running on a platform of property values and security, which in Karen speak translates to making everyone else's life miserable. Their house sits right where my access road crosses into the subdivision, $800,000 of beige stucco and manufactured charm, with a view of my cattle pasture that Karen apparently finds aesthetically challenging. So there I was that Monday morning, staring at this fence that had appeared overnight like some spite-fueled magic trick. The smell of creosote from those fence posts mixed with Karen's overpowering perfume, the kind probably trying to mask 2 packs a day. The metallic clang of that electronic gate sounded like a prison door slamming shut. Karen handed me a 4- to 7-page access agreement with all the enthusiasm of a cat presenting a dead mouse, $500 a month, plus insurance, plus road maintenance costs, liability concerns, property aesthetics. Now, I may work with my hands for a living, but I'm not stupid. That road predates her precious subdivision by 60 years. It's recorded as an easement in the county records, which means I have every legal right to use it. I tried explaining this to Karen as politely as I could. Her response: "I'll call the sheriff for trespassing." And wouldn't you know it, Deputy Williams shows up 20 minutes later. Turns out he's Karen's golf partner over at the country club. Real convenient. He suggests I work something out with the HOA, keep the peace. But here's the thing that really got my blood boiling. Emma's prize heifer, Buttercup, needed veterinary care that morning. What used to be a 15-minute trip to the vet turned into a 4 to 5-minute detour around the entire subdivision. When you got a sick animal, every minute counts. The taste of dust and diesel filled my mouth as I sat in my truck, watching Karen's smug little smile. She thought she had me cornered. What Karen didn't realize was that she had just picked a fight with someone who learned property law the hard way by inheriting land that developers had been trying to steal for 3 generations. Here's your first legal nugget: prescriptive easements. When you've used a road for decades, the law often protects your continued use, even if the surrounding land changes hands. Write that down, because it was about to matter a whole lot more. By Wednesday, I had a harassment complaint filed against me with the sheriff's department. Apparently, My polite inquiries about my legal rights had been interpreted as aggressive behavior and intimidating presence, posing a threat to the peaceful residents of Sunset Hills Estates. In Karen's twisted little mind, asking questions translated to terroristic threatening. But that was just a warm-up act. She started a neighborhood WhatsApp group called Safety First Sunset Hills. And let me tell you, the rumors flying around that chat would have made the National Enquirer blush. According to Karen, I was an unstable widower with anger management issues, letting my cattle roam free, and probably running a meth lab in my barn. The creativity was almost impressive. She managed to rally 3 other HOA board members to her cause, the kind of people who think having a boat makes them admirals and owning a riding mower qualifies them as landscaping experts. Together, they voted to use HOA funds to hire Secure Solutions security services for regular patrols. Nothing says we're terrified of one guy with a pickup truck, like spending community money on rent-a-cops. Now, I could have just sat there and taken it, but my grandfather didn't raise quitters. I hired a surveyor to map out the exact property boundaries and document the easement once and for all. Cost me $800, money I didn't really have, but sometimes you have to spend a little to make a big point. The surveyor showed up Friday morning with equipment that beeped and chirped like R2-D2 having a conversation with a smoke detector. Watching him take precise measurements in the morning dew while Karen glared from her kitchen window felt like science going to war with stupidity. And that's where things got interesting. Here's a mini twist. The survey revealed that Karen's beautiful, expensive fence wasn't just blocking my easement. It was actually sitting 3 feet onto the public right-of-way. The county had very specific setback requirements, and Karen's fence violated every single one of them. I filed a complaint with county code enforcement faster than you could say property line violation. Nothing like using bureaucracy against someone who thinks they're above the rules. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. The following Tuesday, I receive a certified letter from Harrison Blake & Associates, that's Brad's law firm, in case you missed the family connection. It was a cease and desist order claiming I was harassing HOA officials and demanding I stop my campaign of defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter was longer than most Stephen King novels and about twice as scary, threatening to sue me for everything from harassment to interfering with business relationships. Legal fees could easily cost me the ranch, and Karen knew it. This wasn't just about a road anymore. It was about whether a working family could stand up to someone with deeper pockets and connections. That night, I sat in my kitchen under the yellow glow of an old lamp, examining those legal documents with hands more comfortable holding wire strippers than court papers. The smell of leather and hay drifted in from the barn, my usual retreat when life gets complicated. But this time, running away wasn't an option. Emma found me there around midnight, still reading. That girl had radar for when her dad was worried. "We're not giving up, are we?" she asked, her quiet determination a reminder of her mother. "Not a chance," I told her. "Your great-grandfather built this place with his bare hands. We're not letting some wannabe queen bee take it away." The next morning brought unexpected support. Ralph and Betty Kowalski, married 50 years and tougher than a boot heel, stopped by with coffee and sympathy. They'd watched the whole drama unfold from their house across the road. "Seen this kind of thing before," Ralph said, sipping coffee from a mug older than most cars. "Developers and their pet HOAs trying to squeeze out the locals." Even the feed store owner mentioned that other folks were having HOA troubles. Karen's little kingdom of control was making enemies faster than a politician during campaign season. Emma's 4-H advisor, Mrs. Peterson, pulled me aside at the next meeting. "Document everything," she said. "Photos, recordings, witnesses. If this goes to court, you'll need proof. Here's your second legal nugget. Always document harassment when it happens. Photos, recordings, and witness statements all matter in court, and memories fade faster than old jeans. Get it in writing, get it dated, and keep copies somewhere safe." That evening, the sound of my boots on the porch felt different somehow, heavier, like the weight of 3 generations settling on my shoulders, but also determined. Karen thought she could intimidate me with lawyers, fees, and fancy letterhead. She was about to learn that sometimes the best defense is a good offense, Texas style. Karen decided to go nuclear the following week. She organized an emergency HOA meeting about what she called security threats from adjacent properties. I'm talking full PowerPoint presentation. Folks, slides with pictures of my deteriorating ranch buildings that were supposedly visible from the subdivision and somehow bringing down property values. The woman had actually climbed onto her roof to take aerial photos of my barn. I mean, who does that? Up there in her designer yoga pants with a telephoto lens like some kind of suburban spy satellite. The dedication to pettiness was almost admirable. Her grand proposal: a buffer zone requiring me to plant privacy screening at my own expense. $20,000 worth of trees and shrubs to hide my working ranch from her delicate sensibilities. And if I refused, she threatened to sue my insurance company directly for diminished property values. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who usually shows up to HOA meetings. I'd rather spend my evening watching paint dry or doing my taxes, but this time was different. This time, she'd crossed a line from annoying neighbor to someone threatening my family's livelihood. I showed up to that meeting with Emma and Ralph as witnesses, armed with my surveyor's report and every piece of historical documentation I could find. The community center smelled like stale coffee and institutional disinfectant, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. 23 people crammed into a room designed for maybe 15. Folding chairs squeaked every time someone shifted their weight. Karen stood at the front with her slideshow, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. She clicked through photos of my ranch like she was presenting evidence at a murder trial. Property values, she kept saying. Safety concerns. Community standards. When she finished, I stood up and calmly presented my surveyor's report. I explained how the ranch had been there first, how the subdivision was built around existing rights, and how her fence violated county setback requirements. I even brought copies of the original 1947 homestead deed. Here's where the mini twist comes in. During the heated discussion that followed, Karen got flustered and said something she shouldn't have. She mentioned being in contact with Meridian Development about Phase 2 expansion possibilities. The room went dead quiet. See, Meridian Development was the company that built Sunset Hills Estates, and Phase 2 expansion meant they were looking to build more houses. Guess whose 200-acre ranch would be perfect for that? Suddenly, this wasn't about neighbor disputes or HOA policies. This was about Karen trying to force me to sell by making my ranch unusable. The fence wasn't about security, it was economic warfare. Ralph's weathered face cracked into the kind of smile you see right before someone drops a bombshell. Funny thing about conspiracies, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, they tend to come apart when people start talking. Other residents started looking uncomfortable. These weren't bad people, just folks who had bought into Karen's narrative about property protection. Now they were realizing they'd been manipulated into attacking a neighbor whose family had been there for 70 years. Emma stood up during the discussion, and I've never been prouder of that girl. 16 years old, facing down a room full of adults, she spoke with more dignity than most politicians. She talked about her great-grandfather's legacy, about learning responsibility through ranch life, about how the land taught her the value of hard work. This land isn't just property to us, she said, her voice steady despite the hostile crowd. It's where my great-grandfather proved that with enough determination, you can build something lasting. It's where my grandmother raised my dad to believe in doing right by your neighbors. It's where my mom taught me that family means fighting for what matters. The scratch of my pen on my legal pad as I took notes was the only sound in the room. You could practically hear Karen's blood pressure rising as her carefully constructed narrative fell apart. But the real game changer came when Brad Morrison visibly cringed as his wife mentioned the developer connections. See, lawyers are supposed to disclose conflicts of interest. If Brad had financial dealings with Meridian Development while representing the HOA, that was a problem. As we walked out of that meeting, I realized I wasn't just fighting an annoying neighbor anymore. I was fighting a conspiracy designed to steal my family's land through harassment and economic pressure. Here's your third legal nugget: tortious interference. When someone deliberately disrupts your business relationships or tries to force you into financial hardship for their benefit, that's not just mean, it's illegal, and the penalties can be severe. The cool night air felt like freedom as we walked across the parking lot. Emma linked her arm through mine, and Ralph clapped me on the shoulder. Boy, he said, you just turned this from a property dispute into a war. Hope you're ready for what comes next. I was ready. More than ready. Time to show Karen Morrison what happens when you mess with a family that's been defending their land since before she was born. Karen's response to having her conspiracy exposed was to double down on crazy. Within a week, she filed a formal complaint with the county, claiming my cattle posed health hazards to the subdivision. According to her report, my prize-winning Angus were disease-ridden menaces, threatening the safety of innocent children. But that wasn't even the worst part. She started sending anonymous letters to Emma's school, reporting unsafe home conditions and claiming I was an unfit parent. My 16-year-old daughter came home crying because the guidance counselor had pulled her out of class to ask if she felt safe at home. The look on Emma's face when she told me about it. I've never wanted to strangle someone with my bare hands more than I did at that moment. Then Karen went after my livelihood. She used her HOA connections to start calling my electrical contracting clients, suggesting they might want to reconsider hiring someone involved in legal troubles. I lost 3 jobs that week, including a $15,000 commercial project I'd been counting on to pay for Emma's college applications. The final straw was her social media campaign. She created a Facebook group called Concerned Citizens of Sunset Hills and started posting photos of my cattle with captions about dangerous livestock operations near families. Never mind that these same cattle had been grazing peacefully for decades, or that Emma's 4-H projects had won county championships 3 years running. Time to lawyer up. I hired Sarah Martinez, an attorney specializing in agricultural law and property rights. Cost me $5,000 I didn't have, but sometimes you've got to spend money to save everything you own. Sarah took one look at my documentation and smiled like a shark who just smelled blood in the water. "This isn't harassment," she said, spreading the evidence across her conference table. "This is systematic intimidation designed to force a property sale. We can work with this." Sarah filed a counter-complaint for intentional interference with business relationships. And that's when things got really interesting. When you sue someone, you get access to the discovery process. Basically, you can force them to hand over documents and answer questions under oath. And boy did we discover some interesting things. Karen owed $47,000 in back taxes on her property, which explained the desperate need to increase property values quickly. But the real bombshell came when we found out she'd used HOA funds to pay for that fence, $23,000 of community money spent on what was essentially a personal vendetta. That's embezzlement, folks, and it carries serious penalties. Sarah dug deeper and found a pattern. Karen had lived in 3 other Texas subdivisions over the past decade, and in each one, she'd been involved in similar conflicts with rural neighbors. Always the same playbook: harassment, legal threats, mysterious developer connections, and eventual forced sales. The tide started turning when the local newspaper picked up the story. A reporter named Jim Santos had been covering HOA abuse cases across the state, and our situation fit his series perfectly. David versus Goliath stories sell papers, he told me over coffee at the diner, especially when Goliath turns out to be corrupt. Other victims started coming forward: a retired teacher whose vegetable garden was declared a health hazard, a disabled veteran whose service dog was banned from HOA common areas, and an elderly couple forced to remove their late son's memorial garden because it violated landscaping standards. The Homeowners Association offered support and legal fund contributions. Turns out protecting working agricultural land from suburban encroachment is a big deal in Texas. Who knew? But the biggest surprise came from inside Karen's own house. Brad Morrison showed up at my door one evening looking like a man who'd been carrying a heavy secret too long. He handed me a manila envelope and said, "I can't watch this anymore." Inside were HOA financial records going back 2 years, every questionable expense, every suspicious payment, every violation of fiduciary duty documented in black and white. Brad might be timid, but he'd kept meticulous records of his wife's crimes. "She's been skimming money for months," he said, refusing to come inside for coffee. The fence was just the biggest expense. There are others. Emma's 4-H group organized a Save Our Ranches awareness campaign, complete with T-shirts and bumper stickers. That girl turned into a social media strategist overnight, posting videos about ranch life and agricultural heritage that started going viral. Nothing like having a 16-year-old teach you about public relations. But the emotional toll was getting heavy. I found Emma crying over social media bullying from other kids whose parents had bought into Karen's narrative. She was losing friends, getting dirty looks at school, and dealing with stress no teenager should have to handle. Ralph stopped by that evening and found me staring at a letter from a real estate company offering to buy the ranch for fair market value. "You thinking about it?" he asked, settling into my porch chair with a grunt. "For about 5 seconds," I admitted. Then I remembered that my wife loved this place and wanted Emma to inherit it someday. "Good," Ralph said, "because I've got a feeling your troubles are about to become Karen's problems." Sarah called me on a Thursday morning with news that changed everything. She'd been digging through the original property records all the way back to 1947 when she found something that made her literally whoop out loud in the courthouse records room. "Jake," she said, and I could hear the grin in her voice, "sit down for this one. The access road wasn't just an easement. You own it, not just the right to use it, the actual land underneath it." Apparently, there had been a surveyor's error when the subdivision was platted. The developers had assumed the road was public right-of-way and built around it, but the original homestead deed clearly showed that my great-grandfather had purchased and owned that strip of land outright. Think about that for a minute. Karen's fence wasn't just blocking my access. It was sitting on my private property. She was trespassing, and she'd spent $50,000 building a fence on land that belonged to me. But wait, it gets better. Sarah had also uncovered what she called the deeper conspiracy. Brad's secret documents revealed that Meridian Development had promised Karen a $200,000 finder's fee for securing my property. The other HOA board members each had their own side deals, consulting fees for services that seemed suspiciously vague. We were talking about potential criminal charges here, mail fraud for those fake legal threats sent on Brad's law firm letterhead, wire fraud for the electronic communications about forcing the sale, and if we could prove coordination between multiple parties, even RICO charges. That's the law used to prosecute organized crime. Even the county commissioner was receiving campaign contributions from Meridian Development. The entire system was rotten from top to bottom. That's when Sarah suggested something that was either brilliant or completely insane. "If you own the road," she said, "you can control access to it, including charging fees." The irony was perfect. Karen had built the ideal infrastructure for a toll operation. All we had to do was flip the script. Instead of fighting to remove her fence, we could install our own toll system and charge anyone who used my road to access the subdivision. "Is that legal?" I asked. "Completely," Sarah said. "Private road owners can charge reasonable fees for usage. There's precedent all over Texas." That night, I sat on my porch with Emma, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple over our pasture. The smell of evening air carried the sound of cattle settling down for the night, mixed with a distant hum of subdivision air conditioners working overtime. "Dad," Emma said, "are we really going to charge people to use our road?" "We're going to charge them exactly what Karen wanted to charge us," I told her. $500 a month, plus maintenance fees. Emma laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in weeks. "That's beautifully evil." Ralph wandered over with a bay and settled into his usual chair. "When I heard about Sarah's discovery," he said, nodding as if he'd been expecting it all along, "your great-grandfather was a smart man. Always said he bought that land fair and square, every inch of it. Looks like he kept better records than the county." The next morning, I visited my wife's grave to tell her about the plan. Sounds crazy, I know, but I needed to hear myself say it out loud. We'd fought so hard to keep this place, and now we had a chance to not just save it, but make it profitable. "Wish you could see Emma," I told the headstone. "She's got your fight in her, and my stubborn streak." This Karen woman had picked the wrong family to mess with. Here's your legal nugget. Adverse possession works both ways. When someone wrongfully uses your land, you can reclaim it with interest and penalties. Sometimes the best defense really is a profitable offense. Building a toll road system sounds complicated, but with the right team, amazing things happen. Ralph turned out to be more than just a retired neighbor. He'd been the county surveyor for 30 years before hanging up his measuring tape. Betty had taught elementary school for 4 decades and knew how to organize people like a general commanding troops. Marcus Chen, my electrical contractor buddy, took one look at the project and grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. Solar-powered toll booth with automatic license plate recognition. Dude, we're basically building the future. Even Brad Morrison was secretly helping, feeding us inside information about Karen's increasingly desperate strategies. Turns out, when your wife is committing federal crimes using your law firm's letterhead, you develop a sudden interest in damage control. The first step was setting up the legal structure. Sarah helped me file paperwork to establish Lonia Access Solutions LLC, a proper business entity that would protect my personal assets from any lawsuits Karen might try to throw at us. She explained that LLCs create a legal shield between your business activities and your family's financial security. The county permits took 2 weeks and cost $8,470, but we got approval for commercial road operation and electronic toll collection. I had to laugh at the irony. Karen's own fence posts became the foundation for our toll booth. Nothing like recycling your enemy's mistakes into your own success. Marcus designed a system that would make NASA jealous: solar panels to power everything, digital cameras for security, and automatic license plate recognition that could track who owed what. We calculated fees to exactly match Karen's original demands: $500 per month for unlimited access or $50 per trip for occasional users. Betty researched comparable toll rates from other private roads across Texas. Turns out there are more private toll roads than most people realize, and our rates were actually on the low end. Fair and reasonable, she declared, which in Betty speak meant legally bulletproof. The community response was incredible. Local ranchers donated materials faster than we could haul them away: concrete, lumber, steel posts. It was like an old-fashioned barn raising, except we were building justice instead of storing hay. The feed store provided free equipment rental, and everyone wanted to be part of sticking it to the HOA bullies. Emma became our social media manager, creating a TikTok account called Ranch Girl Fights Back that started gaining thousands of followers. She documented every step of the construction process, explaining property rights and agricultural heritage to a generation that gets most of its news from 15-second videos. Kids got a future in communications if ranching didn't work out. Jim Santos from the newspaper embedded himself like a war correspondent, documenting the entire process for his ongoing series about HOA abuse. With media coverage, Karen couldn't try any of her usual sabotage tactics without witnesses. Sarah prepared our lawsuit against Meridian Development for conspiracy and fraud. She also filed criminal referrals with the district attorney's office regarding HOA embezzlement and contacted the FBI about potential mail fraud and RICO violations. When you're fighting corruption, you use every weapon in the legal arsenal. The psychological warfare was almost as satisfying as the construction. I posted official notices at the subdivision entrance about the upcoming toll implementation. Legally required 30-day notice to affected property owners. The panic was immediate and hilarious. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss what she termed extortion and illegal roadblocking. That's when Brad accidentally revealed Karen's secret developer payments to the entire community. You could practically hear marriages ending in real time. The technical details were fascinating. Here's your knowledge nugget. Solar power systems for commercial operations require battery backup and inverter systems to handle peak demand loads. We installed enough capacity to run the toll system for 2 weeks without sunlight, plus security lighting and emergency communications. The beauty of the business model was its simplicity. Subscription services create steady cash flow, basic economics that every small business owner understands. We were solving a problem, road access, while generating revenue, covering maintenance, and proving a point. Don't mess with property owners who know their rights. Emma and I spent evenings in the barn, turned office, planning every detail. The smell of fresh lumber mixed with old hay and the satisfying click of electronic components snapping into place felt like building the future with our own hands. The sound of gravel trucks delivering road improvement materials became the soundtrack of our revenge. By the end of the month, we had a fully operational toll road system that looked more professional than most government installations. Emma had 50,000 TikTok followers documenting our David versus Goliath story, and Brad Morrison had grown enough backbone to start standing up to his wife. Rafe looked at our finished toll booth and nodded approvingly. "Your great-grandfather would be proud," he said. "Taking something meant to hurt you and turning it into something that pays the bills, that's pure Texas thinking." The electronic beep of our first test transaction was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Karen's fence of oppression had become our gateway to financial freedom. Karen's response to our toll road construction was like watching someone have a very public nervous breakdown. She filed false safety complaints with OSHA, claiming our construction crew wasn't following proper protocols. When the inspector showed up, he found our work exceeded every safety standard by a comfortable margin and complimented Marcus on the solar installation design. Next, she tried bribing the county electrical inspector to fail our permits. $500 in cash slipped in an envelope, caught on security camera, leading to a very awkward conversation with internal affairs. Nothing says I'm losing badly quite like attempting to corrupt public officials. Then came the hired protesters. I'm not kidding. Karen actually paid 20 people to show up with signs reading, "Stop the toll road tyranny and protect our property values." The fact that half of them had Louisiana license plates and couldn't pronounce Sunset Hills correctly kind of gave away the game. But the real entertainment began when Karen launched her social media war, creating fake accounts to spread lies about my financial troubles and Emma's supposed academic failures. She spent more time managing fake Facebook profiles than most teenagers spend on actual social media. Here's where the mini twist gets good. Our security cameras caught Karen sneaking onto the construction site at 2 a.m., dressed in dark clothes like some kind of suburban ninja. She was trying to pour sugar into our concrete mixer engine, apparently inspired by too many sabotage movies. The problem was she tripped over a wheelbarrow in the dark and fell face first into a patch of fresh concrete. The security footage of her struggling to get up, covered in grey slop and cursing like a sailor, went viral on Emma's TikTok account within hours, 3 million views and counting. She had to call 911 to get unstuck from the concrete, which meant explaining to paramedics why she was trespassing on private property at 2 a.m. wearing a ski mask in July. Even the local fire chief couldn't stop laughing long enough to operate the hose. Karen's lawyer husband tried filing an emergency injunction to stop our toll road construction, claiming it violated public access rights. Big mistake. When you drag a judge into your family drama, you better have ironclad evidence. Our case was so solid that the judge not only denied the injunction but also ordered Karen to pay our legal fees. The Bar Association opened an ethics investigation into Brad for filing frivolous lawsuits and allowing personal conflicts to interfere with professional judgment. Nothing ends a legal career faster than using the court system for personal vendettas. The community response shifted in our favor faster than a Texas thunderstorm. 3 HOA board members resigned rather than be associated with Karen's increasingly unhinged behavior. Local businesses started advertising toll road construction worker discounts, turning our project into a symbol of standing up to bullies. Regional TV news picked up the story, and suddenly reporters were camping out at the ranch, asking about David versus Goliath battles in suburban Texas. Emma handled the interviews like a seasoned politician, explaining property rights and agricultural heritage with such clarity that I wondered if she should run for office someday. Instead of pressing criminal charges for the sabotage, I decided to offer Karen a choice: community service with Emma's 4-H club or face prosecution for criminal mischief and trespassing. The psychological pressure of forcing her to help the very people she had been trying to destroy was pure genius, if I do say so myself. But Karen's problems were multiplying faster than rabbits in spring. Her tax troubles became public record when the newspaper investigated her finances. A foreclosure warning notice appeared on her front door, photographed by neighbors and shared widely on social media. The smell of desperation was almost tangible when Karen approached Meridian Development, demanding immediate payment for her consulting services. The developers, facing their own FBI investigation, cut ties faster than you could say criminal conspiracy. Our electronic toll system experienced some mysterious technical difficulties during the first week of operation. Investigation revealed that Karen had hired what she called a computer expert to hack our system. The expert turned out to be a 14-year-old neighbor kid she'd paid $50 to tamper with the cameras. When the kid's parents found out, they marched him over to apologize and offered to work off the damages. Smart kid, actually. I ended up hiring him as our part-time tech consultant. Nothing like turning your enemy's sabotage into a recruitment opportunity. The taste of victory kept getting sweeter every day. Our toll road generated $2,800 in the first week from residents who opted for monthly passes rather than deal with day tours. Emma managed the payment app and customer service with the efficiency of someone who'd been running businesses her whole life. The low hum of news helicopters circling the ranch became our new background soundtrack, mixed with the satisfying beeps of toll transactions and the increasingly frantic sound of Karen's voice during her public meltdowns. "Dad, Emma said one evening as we watched the sunset from our profitable toll booth. "I think we broke her." "Nah," I replied, watching Karen pace frantically in her yard across the way. "She broke herself. We just gave her the tools." Karen's final desperate moves were like watching a cornered animal lash out. She filed a complaint with the Texas Department of Agriculture, claiming my cattle were spreading some mysterious disease that threatened the entire subdivision. The state veterinarian who investigated found my herd healthier than most show animals and commended our vaccination and health management protocols. Next came environmental accusations. Karen claimed our toll road construction violated wetland protection laws, despite the fact that we were simply improving an existing road on bone-dry Texas hardpan. The environmental inspector spent about 10 minutes confirming that the nearest wetland was 15 meters away. Then Karen went nuclear on the family front. She tried to have Emma removed from our home, filing reports with Child Protective Services, claiming unsafe living conditions and exposure to dangerous machinery. The CPS worker who visited, however, complimented me on our safety measures and Emma's obvious well-being, and even suggested Karen might need a psychological evaluation for filing false reports. Karen's most desperate move was threatening to expose my supposed tax evasion. Problem was, I've never evaded taxes in my life. Hard to hide income when you're barely making ends meet. The IRS investigation she demanded resulted in a clean audit and a letter commending my record-keeping. Meanwhile, our toll road business was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. First-month revenue hit $12,000, with most subdivision residents choosing monthly passes over the inconvenience of day tours. Emma's customer service skills turned angry callers into satisfied customers who actually appreciated having a maintained, well-lit access road. The media circus had grown from regional interest to national attention. Our small-town Texas toll road justice became a trending topic on social media. Emma's TikTok following hit 500,000, and she started getting sponsorship offers from agricultural equipment companies. My 16-year-old daughter was becoming the face of property rights activism. Karen's public meltdown at the grocery store, where she screamed at me in front of a dozen witnesses about extortion and illegal road blocking, was recorded by multiple shoppers and went viral faster than a summer cold. She was literally shaking with rage, her voice reaching pitches that probably bothered dogs 3 counties over. Her employer, a major pharmaceutical company, placed her on administrative leave after the video surfaced on LinkedIn with her name attached. Apparently, having a sales executive associated with viral meltdowns and federal investigations isn't great for corporate image. The alliance fractures kept coming. Brad Morrison finally filed for separation, citing irreconcilable differences and ongoing criminal behavior. He moved out of the house, leaving Karen with a full mortgage payment she couldn't afford. Brad's cooperation with federal investigators was comprehensive. He'd been documenting Karen's crimes for months, probably planning his exit strategy. Emma and I were working as a real team now, managing what had become a legitimate business operation. We hired 2 part-time employees for maintenance and customer service, creating jobs in our small community. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen's attempt to destroy us had turned into the most successful venture I'd ever launched. The FBI visited Karen 3 times that month, each visit longer than the previous one. Word was they were building cases for mail fraud, wire fraud, and RICO violations. The sound of their black SUVs pulling into her driveway became as regular as the mail delivery. Karen's financial situation spiraled into freefall. Foreclosure proceedings began when she missed her 3rd consecutive mortgage payment. The bank wasn't interested in her excuses about temporary cash flow problems and pending legal settlements. Numbers don't lie, and Karen's numbers were uglier than a roadkill armadillo. Her adult children publicly distanced themselves from her behavior. Her son posted on Facebook that the family was embarrassed and disappointed by his mother's actions. Her daughter blocked Karen on all social media platforms and moved back to Dallas. Nothing says rock bottom quite like your own kids cutting off contact. The subdivision residents organized their first block party in the development's history, specifically to celebrate the new HOA board and thank our family for standing up to corruption. Former enemies became friends, united by the shared experience of being manipulated by someone they trusted with their community funds. The technical success of our toll road operation attracted attention from the Texas Department of Transportation, which studied our model for potential broader application. Solar-powered automated toll collection systems could revolutionize rural infrastructure funding. Emma started talking about studying business and engineering in college. The pressure was clearly getting to Karen. Her midnight pacing in the backyard, the increasingly frequent visits from process servers, the constant phone calls to lawyers who wouldn't return her calls. It was like watching someone's life implode in slow motion. "Dad," Emma said one evening as we reviewed our surprisingly healthy business financials, "do you think she'll try something really crazy?" Emma asked. I looked across the road at Karen's house, where every light was on at 2 a.m., shadows moving frantically behind the curtains. "Honestly, I think she already has." Now we were just waiting for the consequences to catch up. The county commissioners' court meeting that Tuesday morning was standing room only. 237 people crammed into a room designed for maybe half that number, with 5 TV news crews, newspaper reporters, and what seemed like half the internet filming everything on their phones. FBI agents sat in the back row taking notes, and the district attorney's office sent their best prosecutor to observe. The agenda item read, "Public comment on private road access rights and HOA governance." But everyone knew this was really the trial of Karen Morrison versus basic human decency. The irony was exquisite. Karen had requested this agenda item herself, thinking she could rally public support to expose my so-called illegal activities. She had miscalculated badly. She showed up wearing her most expensive power suit, the kind that screams, "I have money and lawyers." But her hands were shaking as she approached the podium. Her fake confidence was cracking like old paint on a barn wall. "Citizens of this county," she began, her voice already too high and rising further, "are being extorted by illegal toll road operations that violate public access rights and constitute highway robbery." The dramatic pause she'd practiced was immediately punctuated by someone snorting with laughter in the audience. She demanded the county shut down our toll operation immediately and arrest me for extortion, harassment, and economic terrorism. Yes, economic terrorism, over a toll road in Texas. When Karen finished her 15-minute rant, complete with theatrical tears and victim narrative, the room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. That's when Sarah Martinez stood up, briefcase in hand. "Your Honors," she said, setting up a laptop connected to large screens around the room, "allow me to present the actual facts." What followed was a meticulous takedown of Karen's credibility that would have made Perry Mason proud. A timeline of harassment and fraud played in living color. Financial crimes totaling $73,000 in misappropriated HOA funds were documented down to the penny. Recorded conversations with Meridian Development showed attempts to force property sales through economic pressure. The audience watched in stunned silence as Karen's conspiracy unraveled on multiple high-definition screens. Email exchanges about making life difficult for rural holdouts scrolled before their eyes. Text messages discussing finder's fees and consulting payments. Bank records showing HOA money diverted to personal accounts. Then Emma took the podium, and I've never been prouder of anyone in my life. 16 years old, speaking without notes to a room full of adults, cameras rolling, her future on display for the world to see. "My great-grandfather built this ranch with his hands and his heart," she said, voice steady and strong. "My grandmother raised my dad to believe in doing right by your neighbors. My mom taught me that family means fighting for what matters, even when it's hard." She talked about the impact on her education, her social life, and her mental health. About learning that some adults will lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want, but that doesn't mean you give up fighting for what's right. "I want to thank this community for showing me that for every person who chooses corruption, there are dozens who choose courage," Emma continued. "And I want to announce that I've received a full scholarship to study agricultural law at Texas A&M, so I can help other families protect their land and their legacy." Applause started slowly, then built to a roar that lasted 3 full minutes. But the real MIC drop moment came when Ralph Kowalski took the podium, carrying a folder older than most people in the room. "I've been county surveyor for 30 years, Ralph said, his weathered voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "And I've got the original 1947 surveyor's notes right here." He opened the folder and pulled out hand-drawn maps that looked like historical artifacts. "Jake's great-grandfather didn't just own the road," Ralph continued. "He owned 50 more acres than anyone realized, including most of what Meridian Development has been marketing as available expansion property." The room erupted. Karen's face went white as old bone. The Meridian Development representative in the third row started making frantic phone calls. Real estate fraud, Ralph said calmly, is a federal crime. That's when the FBI agent stood up and walked toward Karen. Special Agent Rodriguez read her Miranda rights while cameras flashed and phones recorded. Karen Morrison's reign of suburban terror came to an end, in handcuffs. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Subdivision residents lined up to publicly apologize. The new HOA board unanimously voted to remove the original fence and continue paying our toll fees voluntarily for road maintenance. The county commissioners passed the Property Rights Protection Ordinance by unanimous vote, declaring our situation would never happen again. They also declared an official Agricultural Heritage Day, honoring ranch families who built this community. Sometimes, I told reporters afterward, justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure the next family doesn't have to fight the same fight. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in a Harvard Business School classroom, explaining how a small-town property dispute became a case study in creative problem-solving and entrepreneurial justice. The professor introduced our story as an example of turning adversity into opportunity. Honestly, I'm still getting used to being called an innovative rural entrepreneur. Karen received 18 months in federal prison for mail fraud and embezzlement, plus 3 years of probation and full restitution to the HOA. Her house was foreclosed, she declared bankruptcy, and her pharmaceutical license was permanently revoked. Last I heard, she was working at a call center in Oklahoma, and her own children still refused to speak to her. But this story isn't really about Karen's downfall. It's about what we built from the wreckage of her hatred. Our toll road business expanded to 3 additional rural locations across Texas, helping other ranch families monetize access disputes. Lonia Access Solutions LLC now employs 8 full-time people and has been featured in Small Business Magazine as a prime example of finding opportunity in conflict. Emma graduated as valedictorian and is thriving at Texas A&M in the agricultural law program. She still manages our social media presence, which now includes 750,000 TikTok followers who love our justice served with a side of business sense content. We're planning to open a law practice together after she graduates, Sullivan & Sullivan Attorneys at Law, specializing in property rights. The bigger impact has been incredible. Jake's Law passed the Texas legislature unanimously, protecting rural property access rights from HOA overreach. 12 other states have introduced similar legislation. And there's even a Supreme Court case citing our precedent in property law disputes. From harassment and sabotage to justice and innovation, what started as a fight to save our land became a movement that's changing the way property rights are protected, one family, one road, one law at a time. Sunset Hills Estates became a model community with transparent governance and monthly barbecues instead of confrontational meetings. Property values actually increased due to the positive national attention. A small monument honoring agricultural heritage families was erected right next to our toll booth. But the thing I'm most proud of is the Rural Heritage Scholarship Fund, established using toll road profits. We award $10,000 scholarships annually to farm and ranch kids pursuing higher education. Emma administers the program, and this year we helped 15 students afford college. We also partnered with the county to purchase and preserve 500 acres as permanent ranch land, ensuring future generations understand where their food comes from and why agricultural heritage matters. The conservation project attracted matching funds from the state, turning our small investment into lasting environmental protection. The first annual Property Rights and Barbecue Festival drew 5,000 visitors last month, featuring workshops on property law, small business development, and HOA governance reform. Former enemies worked side by side serving brisket and directing traffic, proving that communities can heal when truth wins over manipulation. Our toll road system became the template for rural infrastructure funding across Texas. The Department of Transportation is piloting similar projects in 6 counties, proving that private enterprise can solve public access problems while generating local economic development. The personal healing has been just as important as the business success. I started dating Linda Peterson, Emma's former 4-H advisor, now the elementary school principal. She supported us through the darkest days and stayed for the victory celebration. Emma calls her the mom she chose, which fills my heart every time I hear it. Ralph and Betty officially became Emma's honorary grandparents, teaching her everything about surveying and community organizing. When Ralph retires next year, Emma will take over managing the scholarship fund with Betty's organizational expertise and Ralph's eye for detail. The documentary Toll Road to Justice won a regional Emmy, and my memoir Fenced In, Fighting Back spent 6 weeks on the bestseller list. But the real satisfaction comes from the hundreds of emails we receive from families facing similar battles, using our story as inspiration to fight back against bullies with deep pockets. I still visit my wife's grave every Sunday to update her on Emma's achievements and our unexpected business success. She's going to be a better lawyer than both of us combined, I tell the headstone. And she learned it all by watching her dad refuse to give up. Sometimes, the best response to a bully is profitable persistence. Know your property rights. Ignorance costs money, but knowledge pays dividends. And remember, turn your problems into other people's solutions, then charge them fairly for the privilege. Drop your HOA Night My Story in the comments. The crazier, the better. What would you charge for access to your property? Hit that subscribe button if you love stories where justice gets served with a side of sweet profit. Next week, how I turned my neighbor's noise complaint into a sound ordinance that backfired spectacularly.